What if the political clash we just witnessed isn't a single battle, but the opening salvo in a fight that will redefine America? Chaos. The screen flickers with a rapid-fire montage. A town hall sign, a diverse crowd, then a sudden shift. Raised voices, a blurred image of disruption, faces contorted in anger, a microphone being jostled. The sound of shouting, muffled and indistinct, swells then cuts to a tight shot of Representative Ilhan Omar, her expression a complex mix of frustration, defiance, and raw exhaustion. The air around her crackles with unspoken tension. She's not just speaking, she's responding. She's condemning. And the words she uses, terrorizing immigration push, criticism from the GOP, they're not just political sound bites. They're a declaration. A line in the sand. But this isn't just about a heated moment in a gymnasium. This isn't just about another news cycle. Because as the dust settled, as the cameras zoomed out, and the pundits began their predictable takes, something far more significant began to unfold behind the scenes. A clock started ticking. And a response was brewing. A response from a figure whose words have the power to shake continents. A response that, when it finally landed, promised to not just inflame an already explosive situation, but to fundamentally alter the trajectory of our national conversation. Most people watched the immediate headlines, heard the surface-level arguments, and then moved on. But what if they missed the deeper game being played? What if they missed the silent, strategic currents being unleashed by that very response? Because what is about to happen, what is already beginning to happen, is a seismic shift that will ripple through every town, every family, and every wallet in America, and most people, right now, have absolutely no idea. The scene felt familiar, almost routine. A politician, a town hall, constituents with questions, some angry, some supportive. But this wasn't routine. Not really. It was a pressure cooker, simmering for months, perhaps years, and that town hall, with Representative Ilhan Omar at its center, became the precise point where the steam finally, violently, escaped. It wasn't just a handful of disgruntled voters. It was a symptom of a much larger, deeper fracture running through the core of America. Imagine you're there. The room is buzzing with a palpable energy long before Omar even steps to the microphone. People are holding signs, some supportive, some critical. You can feel the tension in the air, a thick blanket of anticipation and unease. This isn't just about local issues. It's about national identity, immigration, what it means to be an American, and who gets to define that. Omar, a prominent figure, a Somali-American immigrant and Muslim woman, a member of Congress, walks into this charged atmosphere. For her supporters, she represents a new, diverse face of America, a voice for the marginalized. For her critics, she represents something else entirely, a challenge to traditional values, a symbol of what they perceive as a radical shift. When the questions began, they quickly veered away from local infrastructure or healthcare. They hit on the raw nerves of immigration policy, national security, and loyalty. The tone wasn't merely questioning, it was confrontational, at times accusatory. The room split. Cheers from one side, jeers from the other. It wasn't a debate. It was a battle for narrative, for the very soul of the conversation. And then came the moment that changed everything. The disruption. The shouting. The direct attacks. Omar, standing firm, responded. Her words weren't measured, academic pronouncements. They were raw, direct, and cutting. She spoke of a terrorizing immigration push, directly linking the rhetoric surrounding immigration to the aggression she faced. She condemned criticism from the GOP, not just as political disagreement, but as an active component of this hostile environment. These weren't just personal attacks. They were, in her view, part of a larger, coordinated effort to demonize immigrants and those who advocate for them. She wasn't just defending herself. She was articulating a deeply felt grievance shared by millions who feel targeted by the current political climate. But here's the crucial part, the detail that most people missed in the immediate aftermath. This wasn't just about Omar, or her specific critics. This was about the accumulated weight of years of divisive rhetoric, of policy debates that had morphed into cultural wars, of a nation grappling with its own identity in a rapidly changing world. The town hall wasn't the cause of the explosion. It was simply the place where the fuse burned down to the powder. The incident, instantly amplified by social media and 24/7 news cycles, became a Rorschach test for the nation. For some, it was proof of growing intolerance and a dangerous slide into political thuggery. For others, it was an understandable outpouring of frustration from citizens who felt their concerns were being ignored, or worse, dismissed. Both sides, convinced of their own righteousness, saw the event through their own filters, further entrenching their positions. And that's precisely why it became a pivotal moment, not just a fleeting news item. This wasn't a local scuffle, it was a national symptom. The issues at play, immigration, national identity, freedom of speech, political tribalism, are not peripheral. They are fundamental. They touch on deeply held beliefs, economic anxieties, and cultural fears that resonate in every corner of the country. When Omar condemned the terrorizing immigration push, she wasn't just talking about border policy. She was talking about the rhetoric that accompanies it, the language that can dehumanize, that can incite fear and suspicion. And when she singled out criticism from the GOP, she was highlighting the partisan dimension. The way political parties use these deeply sensitive issues to rally their bases, often at the cost of national unity. The immediate fallout was predictable yet intense. Political commentators on cable news debated endlessly. Social media timelines exploded with outrage and support. Think about your own circle. How many conversations did you have, or overhear, where this incident became the central point of contention? It wasn't just a political talking point. It became a personal flashpoint for many, reflecting their own hopes and anxieties about the direction of the country. Families argued across dinner tables. Friends unfriended each other online. The division wasn't just in Washington, it was in our homes, our communities. This incident, raw and unfiltered, revealed the deep cracks in our national foundation. It showed how quickly political disagreement can escalate into personal attacks, how easily rhetoric can be perceived as an existential threat, and how desperate people are for their voices to be heard, for their fears to be validated, or for their ideals to be championed. The political world held its breath. Or, more accurately, a segment of the political world braced itself, while another segment eagerly anticipated. After the town hall incident, after Ilhan Omar's fiery condemnation, the silence from the White House, brief as it might have seemed, was deafening. It wasn't a silence of uncertainty. It was a silence of strategic contemplation. Every political observer, every strategist, understood that a response from Donald Trump was not a matter of if, but of when and, more importantly, how. And in that how lay the true power, the true chess move that would define the next phase of this escalating political drama. To understand Trump's response, you first have to understand the typical patterns of his engagement. He doesn't just react, he orchestrates. He doesn't just respond to a news cycle, he seeks to dominate it. For him, every incident, every controversy, is an opportunity to reinforce his narrative, galvanize his base, and define his opponents. He is a master at turning every confrontation into a loyalty test, every criticism into a rallying cry. So, when the town hall event erupted, Trump and his team weren't just passively observing. They were analyzing. They were calculating. What were the different levers at play? Consider the pressures. On one hand, his base expected a swift, decisive defense of his America First policies and a strong pushback against what they perceived as criticism from a progressive figure. They wanted validation, confirmation that their frustrations were heard and acknowledged. On the other hand, a more restrained response might have been advised by some, perhaps to avoid escalating an already volatile situation, to project an image of presidential calm. But that has rarely been Trump's MO. His power lies in disruption, in seizing the narrative, in speaking directly to his supporters, often over the heads of traditional media. The waiting game wasn't about indecision. It was about priming the pump. It was about allowing the initial outcry to build, for the two sides to become even more entrenched, for the media to churn through its initial takes. This allowed for maximum impact when he finally weighed in. By letting the tension build, he ensured that when his words finally dropped, they would land with the weight of a hammer, commanding undivided attention. His response, when it came, was vintage Trump, direct, unapologetic, and designed to reframe the entire debate on his terms. While the exact wording of his hypothetical response isn't given in the prompt, we can infer its nature based on his consistent strategic approach. It wouldn't have been conciliatory. It wouldn't have been neutral. It would have been a direct challenge. His response wasn't just about addressing Omar. It was about defining the larger conflict. It was about drawing a bright, unyielding line in the sand, forcing everyone to choose a side. This isn't just political theater. It's a strategic deployment of presidential power, using rhetoric to shape public opinion and dictate the national agenda. Think about the immediate ripple effects. The moment Trump's response went public, the media narrative shifted. It was no longer just about the town hall incident itself. It became about his response, and the ensuing reactions to his response. This is how he takes control of the news cycle. He makes himself the inescapable center of the story. This wasn't just a political statement. It was a strategic move in a much larger game. It wasn't just about Omar or the GOP. It was about the broader immigration debate, which Trump consistently uses as a wedge issue, a rallying cry for his base, and a point of sharp contrast with his opponents. By responding in the way he did, he didn't just comment on the issue. He defined it, at least for a significant portion of the population. He put his stamp on the debate, ensuring that his perspective and the concerns of his supporters would be front and center. It's easy to dismiss these political dramas as distant noise, something happening in Washington or on cable news, far removed from our daily lives. We see the headlines, hear the sound bites, and then go back to paying bills, commuting to work, and raising our families. But that's where most people get it wrong. The truth is, these political clashes, especially when amplified by a presidential response, don't stay confined to the Beltway. They reverberate. They echo. And those echoes reach every main street, every diner, every school, and every household in America, often in ways you don't even realize. Think about the ripple effect. An incident occurs. A political figure responds. And suddenly, millions of people are exposed to a specific narrative, a particular way of framing an issue. In this case, it's about immigration, national identity, and who gets to speak for America. When a powerful voice like Trump's weighs in, it doesn't just offer an opinion. It validates, empowers, and sometimes incites. Let's talk about your wallet first. How can a political spat over a town hall affect your finances? It's not direct, not like a tax hike, but it's insidious. When political rhetoric around immigration intensifies, when words like invasion or crisis become commonplace, what happens? It creates uncertainty. Businesses, especially those reliant on immigrant labor or international trade, become hesitant. Investment can slow. Consumers, feeling anxious about the future, might pull back on spending. This isn't a direct cause and effect you'll see on your bank statement tomorrow, but over time, accumulated uncertainty and political instability always trickle down to economic slowdowns, job market fluctuations, and shifts in consumer confidence. Consider the narrative of terrorizing immigration. Whether you agree with the term or not, its use and the subsequent presidential response escalates the debate. It makes immigration not just a policy matter, but an emotional, even moral, battleground. This heightened emotional charge can influence legislative priorities. Money that could go to schools, healthcare, or infrastructure might instead be diverted to border security or increased enforcement, reflecting the perceived urgency of the immigration crisis. This means tax dollars you contribute could be allocated differently, indirectly impacting the quality of public services in your own community. Now, let's talk about your community. The us versus them narratives, supercharged by these confrontations, don't just stay on social media. They seep into real-life interactions. You might notice conversations at your local coffee shop becoming more polarized. Neighbors who once discussed lawn care might now argue passionately about political loyalty. This isn't just uncomfortable, it can erode social cohesion. When people feel that their very identity or their values are under attack, either directly or by association, they become more defensive, less willing to compromise, and sometimes more suspicious of those who hold different views. For example, imagine a community with a growing immigrant population. Before this incident, tensions might have been present but simmering. After the rhetoric escalates, after the highest office weighs in with a strong, often challenging, stance, those tensions can flare. Local town hall meetings might become more hostile. Schools might face increased pressure regarding language programs or cultural inclusivity. Businesses might find themselves caught between different factions of their customer base. This isn't about blaming any single side. It's about recognizing how top-down rhetoric creates a climate where local divisions become sharper, making it harder for communities to work together on shared challenges. Think about your sense of security. Not just physical security, but emotional and psychological security. When politicians constantly frame issues in terms of threats and enemies, it cultivates a pervasive sense of anxiety. If you're an immigrant or a member of a minority group, this rhetoric can feel like a direct threat to your belonging, your safety, and your rights. You might feel more exposed, more vulnerable. If you're someone who feels that your culture or way of life is being eroded, this rhetoric can validate your fears, making you feel more defensive and potentially more resentful. This constant feeling of being under siege, from whatever perspective, takes a toll. It affects mental health, fosters distrust, and makes it harder to feel at ease in your own country. The media plays a huge role here. Every time Trump or Omar speaks on this, every time the issue gets amplified, the echo chamber grows louder. News channels, both mainstream and niche, will pick up these statements and run with them, often framing them in a way that confirms the biases of their audience. This means people are not just getting information, they're getting a continuous reinforcement of their pre-existing beliefs, making it harder to engage in nuanced, constructive dialogue. This constant diet of confirmation bias further hardens positions, making compromise seem impossible and fueling the very divisions that started with that town hall. So, when Omar condemns a terrorizing immigration push and the GOP's criticism, and when Trump issues his strategic response, it's not just a debate about policy. It's about how we define what is acceptable, who belongs, and what values guide our nation. And these definitions, once shaped by powerful voices, directly influence the laws that are passed, the social programs that are funded, and the way people treat each other in the grocery store. We've dissected the immediate spark, the strategic response, and the direct ripple effects on Main Street. But to truly grasp the monumental implications of this moment, we need to dive deeper. Beneath the surface-level political sparring, below the daily headlines, there are powerful, unseen undercurrents at play. These aren't just isolated events. They are symptoms of much larger seismic shifts shaking the foundations of American society, challenging norms that have stood for decades, and pushing us towards an unknown future. This town hall incident, followed by a presidential response, isn't merely a political spat. It's a vivid illustration of the ongoing erosion of political norms. For generations, there were unwritten rules in American politics. Certain lines not crossed, certain levels of personal attack avoided, a baseline respect for institutions, even when disagreeing fiercely. That erosion didn't happen overnight. It's been a slow, steady chipping away, accelerated by the hyper-partisan environment and the rise of social media. When a high-profile attack occurs, and then a presidential response doubles down on aggressive rhetoric, it further normalizes behavior that once would have been considered beyond the pale. This isn't just about rudeness. It's about weakening the guardrails that protect civil discourse and, ultimately, democratic stability. When norms erode, anything becomes possible, and the boundaries of acceptable political engagement become dangerously blurry. Coupled with this is the ever-deepening polarization. The narrative of us versus them isn't new, but it has reached fever pitch. The town hall incident served as another stark reminder that instead of seeking common ground, both sides often retreat further into their ideological bunkers. Each event, each response, becomes another data point confirming pre-existing biases, reinforcing the belief that the other side is not just wrong, but actively malicious or fundamentally un-American. This polarization isn't just about policy differences. It's about a fundamental disagreement on what America is and should be. Is it a nation defined by its historical traditions and existing demographics, or a perpetually evolving melting pot of diverse cultures and new identities? This ideological chasm is widening, making compromise and constructive governance increasingly difficult. And then, there's the colossal role of social media. In an instant, a local town hall incident becomes a global spectacle. A politician's words are clipped, taken out of context, memed, and retweeted millions of times, often without critical analysis. Algorithms prioritize engagement, which often means prioritizing outrage and division. Social media doesn't just report on these events. It actively shapes them, amplifies them, and distorts them. It creates echo chambers where people hear only voices that agree with them, insulating them from dissenting opinions and reinforcing their own narratives. This digital amplification means that political skirmishes, like the one we're discussing, have an exponential reach and impact, turning localized anger into national fury and making it nearly impossible for rational dialogue to cut through the noise. It's an accelerant to the powder keg. But let's pull back even further. What are the historical parallels? America has faced divisive periods before: the Civil War, the Civil Rights Era, Vietnam. In each instance, there was a profound struggle over national identity and core values. We are in another such period. The debates around immigration, racial justice, and economic inequality aren't just policy debates. They are proxies for a larger discussion about who holds power, whose voices are heard, and whose vision of America will prevail. This isn't just about one congresswoman or one president. It's about a clash of visions for the future of the republic itself. The intensity of this struggle suggests that we are witnessing a fundamental reevaluation of what it means to be American in the 21st century. This reevaluation brings with it challenges to democratic institutions. When political discourse becomes so toxic, when trust in elections, the media, and even the justice system erodes, the very pillars of democracy begin to wobble. Accusations of fake news, claims of rigged elections, and the weaponization of legal processes undermine the collective faith needed for a functioning democracy. This isn't about partisanship. It's about the underlying mechanisms that allow our society to govern itself peacefully. Every time an incident like the town hall, and its subsequent high-level response, pushes us closer to questioning these fundamental institutions, the stakes for everyone increase dramatically. The struggle for national identity is perhaps the most profound undercurrent. What does America represent? Is it a land of specific traditions and a largely homogeneous culture, or is it a vibrant, ever-changing tapestry of global cultures? Is our strength in unity or in diversity? The immigration debate, inflamed by this incident and its response, goes right to the heart of this question. For some, immigration represents an existential threat to American culture and way of life. For others, it is the very essence of American dynamism and its foundational promise. This isn't just a political argument. It's a cultural war playing out in real time, with profound implications for how future generations will define themselves and their country. These undercurrents are not just abstract concepts. They have tangible consequences. They influence the types of laws that are passed, the budgets that are approved, and the judicial appointments that are made. They affect how your children are educated, what stories are told in textbooks, and how history is interpreted. They determine whether your community feels united or fractured, whether your neighbors trust each other, and whether a sense of shared purpose can overcome deep divisions. We've peeled back the layers, from the immediate shock of the town hall incident and Trump's calculated response, to the way these events echo through our communities and reveal deeper societal shifts. But understanding the past and present is only half the battle. The crucial question, the one that should keep all of us attentive, is, what happens next? We are at a crossroads, and the trajectory chosen in the coming months and years, directly influenced by such moments of intense political confrontation, will determine the kind of America we all live in. Your future, whether you realize it or not, is being written right now.